You're
So go
welcome.
ahead and introduce yourself, Dimple.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. First of all, thank you so much for having me. And I'm honored to be here presenting with Maria and Chris today. So I'm Dimple Dang. I have over 25 years of experience working in the legal industry. I'm a legal marketing expert and also an AI strategist. I'm also a contributing editor for Attorney at Law magazine, and I do everything from SEO to WordPress website design to teaching lawyers how to actually create content for platforms like TikTok and YouTube Shorts and go viral. And I also am the host of the Mesmerizing Marketing Podcast. And I also produce podcast shows for my clients and repurpose their content into reels and all over. And recently, too, I am a big advocate and fan of AI. So I'm also an AI strategist, and I am building custom GPTs for lawyers and law firms and any business owner that wants to, save more time, be more productive, make more money, and just be more successful overall. So thank you for having me.
Very cool. All right, now go ahead, Chris.
Hey guys, I'm Chris Dreyer. I'm the CEO of Rankings.io, where we help personal injury attorneys dominate Google through search engine marketing. So that's SEO, LSA, PPC, and web design. I also host the Personal Injury Mastermind podcast, and we work with some of the biggest PI firms in the country, and we're just driving them a lot of cases.
Awesome. All right, cool. And rounding out the panelists is Maria.
Thank you, John. I'm Maria Monroy. I'm the president and co-founder of LawRank. We do SEO, LSA, pay-per-click, and web design. Next year will be our 10th year. Next month will be our 10th year anniversary. And we primarily work with personal injury firms, criminal, and family law. Oh, and I also have a podcast, Tip the Scales.
What is it called? Tip the Scales?
Yeah.
Awesome. All right, cool. So with that out of the way, I'm just going to go ahead and jump right in. We got a lot to cover and not a lot of time. So Chris, I'm going to start by asking, well, everybody can answer, but question for you, agency versus doing it in-house versus doing it in-house with agency's help. If I'm a law firm, how do I figure that out?
Basically, it depends on where you're at and your knowledge of the area. So when I look at it, I think of basically effort and control. So if you work with an agency, it's low effort but low control, right? So if you want to bring more control, you can do it in-house, but the agency is the quickest way to get something done the right way. They have systems and processes for scale. You can get, fractional talent across multiple disciplines. A lot of times, take something like SEO, people will consider, oh, I'm going to do SEO in-house. Well, it's not just an SEO specialist. Typically, it's a content team, it's a technical team, or maybe web designers, there may be link building specialists. So if you're low on capital, it's a manner of getting multiple disciplines by working with an agency.
That makes sense. And then when does it make sense to do it in-house?
When you have enough scale and you can hire the right person to quarterback it and avoid the mistakes of learning, you could bring it in-house and you have enough scale to bring in all of the talent. Typically, I would say in the PI space, it's at least 8 figures. Before that, I wouldn't recommend it. Just from what I see, I would love to hear from Dimple and Maria, but typically I wouldn't even consider it until you're at the 8 figures plus, just because of the resources required to do it the right way.
All right.
Yeah.
Maria, did you have anything to add?
Yeah, I can. I think even if you do have the budget to hire, an SEO specialist, a content person, and everything else that they're going to need, the support team that they're going to need, you're really looking for a unicorn. Because when you hire an agency, what you're saying to us is, hey, I need you to finish the race top 3. And in order for us to finish top 3, we have to be top 3 at what we do. When you hire someone in-house, a lot of times, like, you don't know what you don't know. You don't know how to interview. Do they really know, or are they full of it? Like, how do you measure that? And then the other problem that I find with in-house, and I'm not saying that it can't be done, it absolutely can. And a couple of firms are doing a really good job at bringing it in-house. But for example, we just had a client that brought us in and they were doing it in-house. And they're like, nope, we don't have the bandwidth. But the other problem is that they only have one website. They're controlling one website. So they can't test things like, and I know rankings is similar where we track everything that we do and we're looking for patterns, right? If we built this link for 3 accounts, did we see them go up in rankings or down in rankings? What happens if we remove the link? When you only have one project, it makes it really, really difficult because you don't have aggregate data.
That makes sense. All right. And Dimple, anything to add?
Yeah, I think if you're going to bring it in-house too, you have to have someone like a VP of marketing who's going to manage, all the different people that need to be managed because there's going to be processes, there have to be approvals. And, lawyers are busy people, especially personal injury attorneys, they can be in a trial for weeks. So there has to be proper protocol in place for who's going to do the approvals or who's going to approve content in case the person who primarily does it is going to be gone and they're going to be busy. Because if things aren't getting approved, then they're not getting published either. And that's really important. So when it comes to in-house, you need to have like a VP of marketing that has a lot of knowledge in all things like SEO, website design. They need to be able to go in and make simple edits themselves and not rely on, oh, I need to farm this out to someone and now we have to wait like 24 to 48 hours. Because if you want things done quickly, you have to have someone who's able to do all of those things. So even if they're not the ones directly doing them, I feel like a lot of the things they should know how to do those things and they should have that understanding so that they know that they can proof check the work. Is it being done the right way? Is this the way they would do it? Would they approve it? All of those things are really important considerations. So, and one of the great things about, agencies is, they do have processes in place. They do have different teams. They have systems. Ultimately, I think it really depends on what your needs are as a firm and how large you are and, like what your needs are, because it's not going to be the same for, one personal injury law firm to another. It's going to depend on your business goals and your needs and how many, attorneys you have at the firm, what your goals are, what your revenue is, what your case intakes are, all of that.
Absolutely. All right, good deal. So move on to the next question. I'm going to direct this one towards Maria to start. So I hear reviews are important. Is it just Google reviews? Is it reviews on Yelp? How important are reviews and what type of reviews?
I mean, I think having reviews in general is important. We primarily focus on Google reviews because without a firm getting a significant number of reviews and a consistent, like having like a cadence where at least once a week or once every 2 weeks, there's a review. So there's recent reviews on the GMB. It makes it impossible for us to do our job in terms of ranking a firm in the 3-pack, in the local pack, whatever you want to call it, that map pack. We just can't do it. So firms are always like, well, what can we do to help? And it always comes down to the same thing: get reviews. And it's become so important that we literally hired someone that their sole job is to send one email a week for every single one of our accounts, letting them know how many reviews they got the week prior and what their total score is. Like, we can't have firms forget about it for, a week or two. It has to be consistent. And people think that the local pack isn't that lucrative because typically you're going to show up near where people are. So we're looking at a 1-mile radius typically. It's actually really, really lucrative. Like, without it, you're not going to generate cases. But if you show up in the local pack, you're going to generate cases. So I don't think there's anything more. And besides, I'd argue intake and not having any missed calls, which we also include in that email.
Yep.
Nothing is more important than getting reviews if you want to generate cases on Google.
Makes sense. Dimple, anything to add to that?
Yeah, getting consistent reviews on Google is so critical to actually having, your listing show up higher in the 3-pack, because when you don't post reviews as often, you're going to be moving down instead of moving up. So it's important to consistently, have a process in place where the attorneys at the firm are asking their clients to leave a review, where they have a direct link they can send them. Because if they're not doing that, right? it's going to be that they're going to notice like a drop off in the calls when you look at the analytics. And that's the reason why, because the most important thing is, besides obviously having a very complete profile, updating it, adding information, is to get reviews and to get 5-star reviews. Because like, for example, there's Google local ads. And if you don't even have 5-star reviews and you have less than that, you can't even qualify to be part of that program to advertise for, guaranteed leads. So it's very important.
Gotcha. Chris, anything? Did they get it?
Google reviews, they're not all weighted the same too. So there's trust scores on each review. So if you have a Google Guide review, it's worth more. I would put right behind Google, I would put Yelp because it aggregates to Apple Maps and other big third-party aggregators. Then the other thing that I would say is when we're looking at the real estate on Google, it starts with LSA, the local services ads, then Google ads, then local maps. To rank in LSA, it's based upon region, response, and reviews. To rank in the map pack, it's based upon relevance, distance, and prominence. And under prominence, it says review count and score. So not only volume, but rating. But absolutely essential if you want to grow your firm on Google.
Cool. All right. Dimple, this one's to start with you. How has SEO changed now with social media?
Well, that's a great question. So back in the day with social media, people were not really paying too much attention to what they're putting in their captions, what they're putting in the content, what they're, putting in terms of alt tags. But now, like, for example, if you go to Instagram and you do a post, a lot of people don't know this, but there's an extra section where you can go and you can put what's called an alt tag. And alt tag means basically you're going to tell Google what that video or reel is about, because now a lot of this content, it actually gets indexed on Google. And, when you go through a Google search result page, before maybe you're going to see a sponsored section, you're going to see the Google local listings, you're going to see the organic, SEO, websites that are coming up. But now, like, things like podcasts come up. Now things like, shorts come up, like even TikTok videos, things like that. So it's really important that you're paying attention to those things. So even on TikTok, they have their whole algorithm where you have to, if you want to show up for something, you need to say the word in the video. You need to, make sure that if that's what you want to try to rank for, it needs to be there. So everything has to be strategic. And I always say, like, before you just randomly start creating content for social media, you need to really sit down and work with someone to develop a strategy that is customized and unique to your needs. Cookie cutter stuff does not work anymore. You have to have a strategy in terms of what differentiates you. And you also have to be able to have a personal brand. Even if you work for a big firm, you don't work for a big firm, a personal brand literally is what's going to make the difference between someone hiring your law firm versus someone else.
Makes sense. Chris, anything to add to that?
So I'm not a social media expert. I'll put it bluntly. I've interviewed a ton of attorneys on our podcast, and the thing I can tell you is 95+% of the attorneys that I speak to are not meant for social. I'm sure some people would argue, but it requires a different form of production creativity in order to get the attention. I think they would be better served in other mediums in most cases. I would just say there's so much competition even on social media now that the production quality, the copywriting, the strategy it's just so important. And I think that I would just say be cautious. It's not just go there and post some blogs that you wrote and a big stock photo. There's more to it than that.
Goes back to what Dimple said about strategy, huh? All right, cool. And Maria, anything to add on that?
No, I mean, I agree with everything that was said. And I definitely see some lawyers doing social that I'm like, you just should not be posting on social. I think you have to enjoy it to post on it. And I have seen those results where literally TikTok is showing as one of the results. So I've actually seen one of our clients show up. So definitely think that if you are going to do social, you should take advantage of the alt tag. But I definitely don't think it's for everyone.
Okay, cool. Chris, I'm going to hit you up with this one. What is link building, and what difference does that make as far as how you're ranked?
I'll use some analogies here. So if you're trying to win the first page of Google, I think of it as like an election. Like if you want to win an election, you want to get as many votes as possible. If you want to earn that first result in Google, you want to get as many links as possible. All links are not created equal. There's good links and bad links. Some are weighted differently than others, but in my opinion, they're more important than ever right now. Those third-party endorsements of your content. That's what a link is. It's an endorsement. It's saying, "Hey, this is good. I'm linking to it. I'm trusting it." With the proliferation of AI content, the downward costs and the ability to create content more easily, there's a substantial volume of content being added to Google's index. So it's more important than ever that links come into play so that Google understands which pages are important and which should be favored.
Makes sense. Maria?
Yeah, I don't think Google's going to get rid. There's been rumors of like, oh, they're not going to care about backlinks anymore. And the truth is that it makes their job a lot easier. And the way that I love analogies too, and the way that I explain it, because there's a couple things. Everybody talks about backlinks. We like to talk about referring domains. So where are your backlinks coming from? So let's say that you're doing the top spot with FindLaw, right? FindLaw is one referring domain, but it can give you 2,000 backlinks, right? And Google has said that after X amount of backlinks that come from the same referring domain, the law of diminishing returns kicks in. Now, Google doesn't say much to us. So when they say something, we listen. So the analogy that I use is if somebody went to Facebook and asked in a Facebook group, does anybody know a whatever type of lawyer, right? Would you rather have one person leave 50 comments vouching for you or 50 people commenting once saying, hey, hire this person, right? So you have to be really careful with only looking at your backlinks. You want to see where are those backlinks coming from. And to add to what Chris said, the analogy that I use is, would you rather have a local law school professor vouching for you or an 11-year-old kid? So the authority of that referring domain matters and the relevance to what you do.
That makes sense. Dimple, anything to add?
Yes. So when it comes to backlinks, right, one of the things that really matters is, yes, again, are they quality links? Are they coming from a quality website and an authoritative source or not? So one of the best ways to get a quality backlink is through doing regular press releases for your firm. Because when you do a press release, that backlink is up here in terms of high authority and quality. And when you're doing that, so if your press release gets picked up by, let's say, 5 other news media sites, so now you have links coming in from 5 different sites, right? So what you want to do is you want to make sure that you're getting quality links from that. And even with your podcast, when you have a podcast, right, and you have it on Apple and Google Podcasts and things like that, and you're putting a link back to your website. So now you can get a link from, a really powerful and authoritative site like Google coming back to your site. So you have to think about where you're getting these links from and are they quality? Because if they're not quality and they're garbage, it can actually have a negative impact on your website and your rankings can drop. So it's really important that when you're working with an SEO provider, that they really know what they're doing and they're not just randomly getting links that are, just poor quality and they're called, bad links and things like that. It has to be a quality link.
That makes sense. All right. So, question. So local SEO, and I'm going to start with Maria on this. What is it? How do you track it? And can you tell me more about what local SEO is and how important it is?
Yes, I love local SEO. Whenever I do presentations at conferences, I always start with like a picture of my daughter and I say how she's my favorite child and how I also have a favorite type of SEO, which is local SEO. Where it gets really tricky is that, let's use Chicago for an example. Let's use a city I know better. Let's use LA. Let's say that you are in downtown LA and you Google for a car accident lawyer. And let's say you geo-modify, you put Los Angeles car accident lawyer. The results that you're going to get for organic, not the local pack, organic are going to be the same if you go to Santa Monica. But the local pack results are always going to be, and it gets a little technical because not always if you're geo-modifying, but typically they're going to show you businesses near you. The local pack is meant to show you local businesses. So think of it like a pizza shop. If you want to get pizza or to order pizza, you're not going to go 20 miles out. You're not even going to go 10 miles out. Same thing with a dry cleaner, a plumber. You want someone near you. So what's really neat about the local pack is that it gives really everyone a chance to kind of show up in it to some extent, right? Like with organic, it's going to be, 9, 10 firms, and that's it. But the local pack, it really depends on where you are. But what makes it really tough is it's really hard to measure it. Because if you Google from your office, let's say you're a personal injury firm and you Google car accident lawyer, you're going to show up in the local pack because the proximity portion of the algorithm is like, are you kidding me? You are at a PI firm. Like, here it is, right? But if somebody's Googling for a PI firm out of your office, you have other problems. So what I want to understand is what happens when you walk across the street and you go to Starbucks and you Google personal injury lawyer? What happens when you go a block down, right? So the tool that we use to measure is Local Falcon. And this is a third-party tool. Any of you can sign up for this. It's really inexpensive. It's probably maybe like $20 a month. And it'll actually show you a map. And you want to use a 1 mile radius for most markets. And it'll show you your office in the middle. And it'll tell you in a circle where you rank 1, 2, 3. Anything that isn't green is not going to be top 3 anymore. Now you want to be top 3. And yes, reviews play a factor, but it's not just about reviews. You could have a ton of reviews and not show up anywhere but your office. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah, no, it does. I like where you said you're doing it from your office and your office comes first. Big surprise, right? So
Yeah.
and what happens when you go across the street? That's pretty wild. And then Dimple, anything to add on local SEO?
Yeah, I love local SEO, and that's, one of my specialties in terms of getting people to rank locally for different keywords. So whenever, I talk to clients, I ask them what are a couple of cities that they want to get more cases in from? What does their historical data tell them in terms of intakes? Are there particular areas where maybe they've gotten more cases, and what type of cases have those been? For example, where they slip and fall, where they, construction accidents, things like that. Because when it comes to that, like everyone may say, oh, I want to rank for personal injury lawyer, right? But what you have to understand is that's just one way that people search online. When people have a problem or they're injured, they're going to look for specific answers to questions. They're going to look for different things, right? So for example, one of the tools that I use for research, or even, lawyers can use, is called Answer the Public. And you can put in a keyword, and when you put in the keyword, it's going to give you all the questions that the public is asking pertaining to that keyword. So literally you have to come up with a strategy in terms of, like, I sit down and I say, okay, we want to focus on these 3 cities. We want to focus on these type of cases. Now we're going to come up with a content strategy in terms of what are the questions, what are the keywords, what are the problems that we're solving that we want to come up for. But then also you have to be really intelligent about it, and you have to think about seasonality in terms of, well, if it's winter time, like in New York City, there's not going to be that many cases coming in for construction accidents because of the weather, right? But there's going to be more cases coming in for, let's say, slip and falls and people slipping on black ice and things like that. So you have to think about that strategy and you have to figure that out. But with local SEO, the best way to rank is to actually consistently create SEO optimized blog posts that you're posting on a regular basis. Because I'll give you an example for the audience. So if you have a website that's 20 pages and you both have 20 pages to start with, and at the end of the year, there's someone who's actually posted 10 blogs a month. So now they have 120 pages plus 20, they have 140 pages. That's 140 times more chances of them having the opportunity to rank on page 1 of Google and to possibly get leads, or to rank even multiple times on Google for the same keyword, than their competition. And when you have more pages on your website, when you look at sites like FindLaw and, Yelp and all these big sites, it's because they have thousands and millions of pages. They're considered to be powerful and authoritative sites. So the more pages that your website has, in terms of quality content, the higher Google's going to rank you for that too.
Makes sense. Okay, Chris, locally SEO, what do you have to add?
Yeah, I'm going to put it on the audience. Okay, so I'm going to put people on the spot. Oh, we know the importance of reviews. We got a process, right? When the consumer gets their check and that's your process, that's not a process. So every single employee at your firm should be incentivized at least 50 to $100 to get a review. You should be comboing this with your grassroots campaigns. There should be multiple asks. If you get any negative reviews, they should be treated very seriously, to the point where Dan Newland, who has the biggest single location practice in the United States, personally, the CEO, massive, personally meets those individuals to try to change the 1 star to a 5. That's how important it is. And so I would just say, look, it's more than just asking when they give the check. Like, think about incorporating the entire company into getting these, because they are so important, because LSA is at the top. Local SEO is the best, is the most real estate for organic. So I would put it back on the audience, and not on the agents.
Makes sense. All right. One of my favorite subjects on all of marketing and SEO is tracking. And the question is, bad leads or bad intake? And Chris, I'm going to go ahead and start with you on how do you tell if it's bad leads or bad intake?
Oh boy, where I go with this
What do
one?
you do with it?
So I mean, you got to be answering the phone immediate. I mean, any missed calls is like jail, right? Your LSA is not even a show if you miss some calls. And I hate to say it depends, but it depends. Like what's your case selection criteria? Are you, the threshold? Do you have a high threshold because you're a litigator that's looking for those big cases and you don't have big staff? You should still be monetizing the so-called waste. You can get reciprocity from other firms. You can monetize those. And so how do you tell if it's bad? Well, you can listen to the calls. There should be psychological statements. They should have scripts that they're using and being empathetic, and they should be walking them through qualification process. There's so much of this. Just listen to the calls. Make sure you have someone that's really on top of this. Use a service like CallRail so that you can listen and ensure that you're missing no calls, whether that's with an in-house setup or with an external third party. And also, there's no more, 9 to 5. You should have it on 24/7. So even if your staff isn't there, it should go to a third party call center in the after hours or on the weekends. But those are some of the basics. I'm sure Dimple and Maria can fill it in from there.
Go ahead, Maria.
So I'll just tell you guys a story. So we have a client that was consistently generating 28 cases a month from just SEO. So month over month, 28. I get an email from this client who I won't name on the webinar. I will privately, but I won't publicly in a recorded setting. And so I get an email from him and he's a bit upset and he's like, hey, this month we signed 17 cases, and he's kind of like putting it back on us, right? I said, okay. So I talk to the team. I'm like, okay, let's look at local Falcon reports. Let's look at rankings. Let's look at call volume. So calls were actually up. I think this was October. So from September to October, they actually had more calls. It was like 2 more calls. It was nothing crazy, but I'm like, it was technically more. So I had just upgraded iPhones, and this matters because under his contact, I have his firm and his phone number. And you guys know how iPhones like mark the one you used recently. Because I had switched iPhones, it had the wrong recent. So when I called him, it went to his firm, and I could tell it was his firm because it rings funny. So I was like, okay, well, might as well just see how long it takes them to pick up the phone. Like it's already dialing. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 rings. 7. So I hung up. I called the client. We're good friends, so I used some language that I won't use here, but I was annoyed. I was like, hey, I need this fixed. He was like, I'm so sorry. This was on us. Let me fix it. So they went from 17 cases, 28, 17. The following month, they got 34 cases from the internet because it was like 2 rings and it has to pick up or it goes to the, answering service. But he didn't want it to go to the answering service. So there was a lot of pressure to make sure that these calls weren't going there. The other thing that I'll add is that what firms always say is, look, when we want a case, we sign the case. Okay, well, that's BS because nobody has 100% sign-up rate of cases that they want. First of all, Second of all, what I want to understand is who is determining what is a want? Where can I see that, right? There was this many wanted cases, we call them wants, right? Or qualified leads. And then how many were signed, right? And we want to see that in the 90 to 95%. But I also want to see everything else that was not a want or not a qualified lead. Somebody has to spot check that the intake specialist wasn't like, oh, I did kind of a crappy job, so I'm going to say this wasn't a wanted lead, right? So I get that a lot of lawyers are like, I'm a lawyer and I want to be in court or I want to be doing law things, but this is actually really, really important, and it's just so crucial. So oftentimes I say, stop worrying about how to get more leads. How are you maximizing the leads that you're getting?
Yes, absolutely. Dimple, what do you have to add?
Yeah, it's so important, especially in personal injury law, when someone, is contacting through, let's say, the chat feature on the website, or they're calling, they have an urgent matter. And if you don't get back to them right away, you're going to lose that case, right? And I remember a lead came in, because I see all the leads for some of my clients, and it came in at like 6 a.m. on a Saturday, right? And it was a good lead. It was an actual case. And, the person who was on call, because there's different people that rotate on call, contacted them right away, met with them that weekend, and signed them up as a client. Had that not happened, that case would have gone to another firm, right? And so even me, sometimes when I see leads come in and they have not responded, I will send it back to intake, and I'll say, hey, who's on top of this lead? Because sometimes they're busy, they need that little push. And that's like they see that other, the ding notification from their email. Maybe they didn't check email the first time, but they will, because it's so important, right? Like, Maria said, it's so important, like, because if you don't sign them up, then they're going to go work with another law firm. Might as well be you, but you have to be on top of your team to train them that, okay, if someone is not able to, even if they're on call, they're not able to, and it's a good case, there should be a backup person.
Yep. No, absolutely. It is funny, if you don't pick up in so many rings, it goes to an answering service. You don't want to go to answering service because they're not going to do the same job as your team, but you got to stay on top of your team too and make sure they're doing the right job. So it makes total sense. Question, does exclusivity make sense for working with an agency, or does it make sense to work with multiple agencies? What's your take on that, Maria?
I feel really passionate about this one. And I think Chris does too. I don't know how Dimple feels, but we used to offer exclusivity, and we ran into this issue where we had two clients in the same state wanting to go into each other's market. Neither would allow the other one to go in. Like we were like, you let him, he lets, no, like hard no. So what we realized was that we were inhibiting our clients' growth. So we've completely stopped offering exclusivity. And the problem is that, actually, I'll tell you a story. Same client that this whole thing happened with, when he first contacted us, like 2 or 3 years ago, he asked me, hey, do you guys offer exclusivity? And I said, no, we don't. And he said, oh, thank God, that's just what I wanted to hear. And I was like, wait a minute, no one has ever said this. Like, please tell me more. And he was like, well, I've really limited my options throughout the years and looking for someone that would work with me exclusively. So I've worked with all these agencies exclusively, but I've never had a return on investment. Like, I've never gotten an ROI. So now I'm just looking for the best. And I don't care who else you work with, as long as I'm seeing a return on investment. And he came in being the second client in the market that he came into, and we're still working with the other firm. So I know they're generating cases. And at the end of the day, I mean, we're not Scorpion. I'm nothing against them. They've amazing job at marketing themselves and fine law. I'm not going to work with 10 firms in a market. Heck, I'm not even going to work with 5. But can I generate a return on investment from multiple firms in one market? Absolutely. Also, I think that the firms that offer exclusivity, they're just not having this issue where their clients want to expand. And they're just churning. It's like, oh, I'm exclusive with you for 12 months. You won't see results. You'll go to the next agency. I'll bring on another client. It's a great way to get someone to sign up with you. Like, oh, I'm only going to work with you. But at the end of the day, if I don't get you cases and I say to you, well, I'm only working with you, you're not going to care. Can I cuss on this thing or no? No? Okay.
Yeah.
You're not going to care, right? You guys know what I wanted to say.
Uh-huh.
So that's my take on it.
Dimple, what do you think?
I mean, I'm going to be honest here. I think it's a little bit of a red flag when someone will, come to you and say, "Oh, exclusivity and this and this." It's kind of a red flag of like what their expectations are going to be and how they're just going to micromanage everything. And I have clients all over the US and different cities, different states, all that. So by chance, maybe I don't have the same client in the same practice area in the same city, right? Because I mean, I handle marketing for all types of legal marketing for, PI, for divorce, for business law, for state, for all the practice areas, right? But if someone comes to me and says exclusivity, like, okay, you want me to give you exclusivity, are you going to now pay me like, 100 times more so that I, don't go get someone else, right? But then are you going to also guarantee how long you're going to actually work with the person? Because I think it just there's enough business out there for everyone, right? That's why when you look at the first page of Google, there's not one person, two people, three people. Yes, you want to be in the top three, but there's a whole page of results. Maybe you're showing up high in the local listings. Maybe you're showing up high organically because of SEO. But also there's like hundreds and thousands of keyword phrases that you can come up for. And within, like, let's say you service 3 counties, within 3 counties, like there could be literally like 150 different cities and towns that you can optimize for SEO to rank for. So there's no reason to be threatened and go ask for exclusivity, in my opinion. I think you have to check yourself at the door to be like, why is that important to me? If someone said that to me, I'm going to say, why is that important to you? Because I want to understand where they're coming from, right? And sometimes it's like a self-limiting belief, and maybe they need to get over that.
So Chris, I'm going to pay you 25% more if I'm the only person in Chicago that you're doing this for. What do you say?
25% is not enough, but maybe 300%. Maybe we'll talk. No, for real. So, do you want to work with the best, or do you want to do you want to be exclusive? And do you want to make money, or do you care about status? So there's a status orientation where it's a zero-sum game, or are you interested in wealth and you want to make money, you want to work with the best. The best are not going to be exclusive unless you pay their true opportunity cost, not 25%, but maybe 300 to 1,000%. Because there's all kinds of issues for the agency, right? You have client concentration issues. Like, what if you churn? Right now, I just churned a huge percentage of my revenue. There's a lot of risk that accompanies that through labor-based expenses. So I think this request for exclusivity comes from traditional media, radio and TV, which have limited distribution and spots, and I get it. But when it comes to search engine marketing, it's just not a thing. So if you want to, and I understand smaller agencies will typically use it because it's a psychological trigger for scarcity. But it creates urgency through scarcity, but the best don't offer exclusivity.
And
Gotcha.
I just want to add, you
Yep.
used to offer exclusivity.
Yeah, when we were small.
Yeah, so did we.
Grew
Yeah.
up and grew out. Yep. No, it makes sense. All right, cool. So talked a little bit about how to make the intake team accountable by listening to and doing some process around that. How does a firm keep their SEO agency accountable? Dimple?
I think with SEO, right? Like, for example, we use SEM Rush, right? So it shows how the rankings are improving, which keywords are actually, ranking higher and higher, how those are growing, how the search traffic is growing overall for the website, right? So that's like a quantifiable way to say, okay, these are the results that we're getting based on the work that we're doing, right? And obviously to, you can click and you can see like, yes, I'm ranking here, I'm ranking here, I'm ranking here. But to do all that manually is is, pointless. It takes hours and hours and hours. So to have some type of, analytical software and technology in place where you can actually put in the keywords and you can see where you're ranking, you can do research on, their competitors and see where they're ranking. You can see what backlinks are coming in, and it just gives you like the whole picture. And, you can't lie with like a detailed report that tells you like, okay, this is how you're ranking, right? Even when it comes to like TikTok and Instagram Reels and YouTube Shorts, you can't lie when it says, oh, you got 100,000 views on this one reel, right? Because it shows you that. And those are the numbers. It tells you the data. It tells you, all the information that a client would need to gauge, how their campaign is working. So it's about, having the right reporting and the analytics, but also being able to go over it with the client in a way that they understand it. Because if they were to look at it on their own, they're not going to understand what that really means. So it's actually being able to explain it to them in a manner where they're like, oh, I understand. Okay, I see what this is what happened. Oh, yeah, these were our goals. Yeah, we're on track to actually exceed those. Now let's talk about the next plan for next quarter, what we want to achieve.
Sounds good. Chris?
I think it starts with transparency, and there's joint accountabilities through the agency and through the firm. So the firm needs to provide reports through their CRM or direct CRM access. I think a lot of the reports that many SEO agencies provide are leading indicators of success and not actually lagging indicators of cases. So they are predictive of issues and changes that you need to make, and how many backlinks you acquire, what's your weekly share of local voice, things like that. But really, when it comes down to is the firm willing to provide CRM access to the agency? Because then there can be a joint accountability for success. And ultimately, that's the name of the game. We see so many times agencies will send these reports of traffic in their Google Search Console impression share, and then they're just not signing cases because it's those investigative top of funnel queries and not the bottom of funnel with commercial intent. So I think it's both. I think and it's all around transparency.
Yeah, Maria?
I agree with Chris. If I had $1 for every, you guys have no idea how many people come to us and they're like, I'm ranking, but I'm not getting any cases. And this is the report, and this is what my agency's showing. And there's this frustration that comes with it of why isn't this working? And I think ranking is very sexy. It's like, oh, I'm on the first page. I don't care about that. I do, but I don't. It's a means to an end. What I want is cases. At the end of the day, how many cases are you getting? Period. There's so many reports that we can send and this and that. And let's face it can be just all fluff, right? Like, oh, we did this, we did that. At the end of the day, nobody cares. What they care is where are the cases. Now, there are KPIs that should be set, right? And the KPIs should be set based on the market. Meaning, if we look at your 5 top competitors, what are their metrics? What are their referring domains? What are their how many pages of content do they have? What's their organic traffic? Not counting paid, direct, social, just organic. And are we starting to get those, or we're trending to get to where they are, right? Now, combine that with organic rankings, local rankings, long tail searches, and call volume. Then it's like, is it a call volume issue? Like, are the calls there? Is it an intake issue? Ultimately, should lead to cases. And it can get a little bit complicated because I don't want to say that rankings doesn't matter, but believe it or not, ranking organically for car accident lawyer isn't necessarily going to do what you think it's going to do. You need to rank locally. You need to be generating cases from informational intent, so answering the questions that users have, right? You should be the authority in your market. You should be the Wikipedia for legal related questions. And some of these cases can turn into really big cases. Like somebody searches something random, and next thing you know, you have a huge case. This happened to a client of ours in Houston. He was with us for a few months. I get a call on a Saturday. I'm like, okay, well, either the office is on fire or the website's down, because he's calling my personal cell on a Saturday. He was super excited because he had signed a huge trucking case. Now, we know that trucking cases, at a minimum, it's probably what, $3 million? you're collecting at least $1 million. And he was driving to the office to go sign this case. And he said to me, this will pay for you for years to come. And we're not cheap. We're a lot of things cheap. We're not cheap. We're not inexpensive because we need to catch up to your competitors and we need the budget to do so. Right now, that doesn't mean that we don't have packages that would work for anybody. But if you say to me, hey, Maria, I want to dominate the market, right? I want to rank top 3. I want to compete with Morgan and Morgan. That's not going to be inexpensive.
That makes sense. So, had a couple of questions about AI, and I know, Dimple, you're working quite a bit with AI. How and when are you using AI to assist in your marketing programs?
So for example, I use ChatGPT all the time, but now with ChatGPT, you can create your custom GPTs, right? So you can actually program it to do whatever it is that you want to do. So imagine if there's like a law firm and it's a personal injury firm and they have to spend, a lot of time in terms of, the admin work, the research in terms of determining, hey, what's the potential value of this case going to be? What are historical cases that had, similar type of situation happen where the person was injured with this type of injury, they had to get this type of medical treatment, all these things. So imagine having a custom GPT that in one place they can do all of their research. It's going to pull information from the web from different sources that I've dictated what those sources are. I've dictated how I want it to operate. I've dictated, personal information in terms of like what's important, right? So that's like one example. So another example is created a custom GPT for a client where, okay, we want to create short form videos and content, but we wanted to actually create content based on the brand voice of that client, based on their practice areas, based on the type of cases that they want, the type of questions that they want to be answering. And so literally programmed a custom GPT for that client for that, but not only for that, but to also create like AI images that can go along with the short form content that they can use for YouTube Shorts and for TikTok and all those things. So those are just 2 examples, but I mean, it can be done literally for anything. Like I am in the process of creating one for my client's podcast because I do their show. And I'm like, hey, instead of every time me manually giving it directions, I'm just going to create a custom GPT. So then it's going to save me time and it's just going to know even the type of tone I want, the language, the content. I can be very, very specific. So with, I was at CleoCon, a couple of months ago, and there's a lot of talk about AI. And they said that actually one of the top industries where AI is going to be huge and, legal was number 2, and so like it's time to actually start utilizing, incorporating AI into your law firm, because if you're not, you're going to get left behind. See, I study all this stuff, I do all this, and it's moving so quickly that my head spins. So I can just imagine the average person who doesn't have time to really learn it and understand it. It's so quick that things are happening very fast and it's advancing very quickly. And the firms that are embracing it are going to be able to grow very quickly. They're going to be able to save money. They're going to be able to use that money to, put it back into their marketing and have a bigger budget than they did before. So there's a lot of advantages, with utilizing AI and being more efficient, being able to grow, being able to, do all this research that maybe something that would have taken you 10 hours to do, you can now do in like 5 minutes. That's a huge 10 hours back in your day. So it's also for lawyers, I think nowadays, having that quality of work-life balance. Nobody wants to work like 15 hours, 20 hours a day if they don't have to. So if they can get even an hour back a day, that's 5 more hours that they can spend with their family or they can do something else.
Yeah, makes sense. Maria, are you incorporating AI into anything that you do?
Honestly, not really. On the SEO side, I mean, I use it myself for like random things or like my social or things like that.
Yeah.
But when it comes to SEO and the content that is being produced, you guys who are in the YMYL space, your money or your life. So financial, health, legal fall into this category. And I know that Google has said that it won't penalize AI content, but I don't think it's going to reward it. So we actually have lawyer writers and editors, US based, that write all of our content. And as time goes by, I think this is going to be a really great thing for us internally, just because everyone's going to go the AI route and we're not. And yeah, I'm honestly not a big fan of AI for SEO. I mean, you can use it for like little things, but not really for anything substantial, not yet at least.
Chris, where do you fall on this?
I just want to add something. I have to agree with Marie on that for like content creation for blogs. Like we write all of those original content as well. So when we talk about using AI, it's more so to like save time on research and things like that, or using it for social media, or using it for planning out things like planning out what are topics for podcast episodes, what are topics. It's like planning out the strategies, right? But when you're creating content, even though they say they may not, but if Google has hundreds of factors. It's going to have to pick the factors of, well, okay, well, this site's using AI for all their blogs. This one is doing it organically. It's obviously going to value the organic content more because there's more effort and human intelligence put into it.
Chris?
Yeah, real quick. So if I had to say 2023 had a couple words, I'd say Ozempic or AI. But really, the big thing with AI is it's been around. Logic-based AI has been around, right?
Yep.
The if this statement, what we're talking about is generative AI. I think that it's fantastic for, it creates leverage. I think that it can enhance, efficiencies and productivity and things like that. I think that it has to have human oversight. It's like a tool, right? It's not a standalone at this moment, but there's going to be many more developments. We're using it a little bit on the content production side, on research and things like that. But then we'll come in with a JD editor and tune it up and make sure it has that unique component to it for the EEAT or the YMYL. But yeah, that's where we're at. And labor, our biggest expenses walks on two legs typically. So if we can use some tech to cut down that and generate some more profit, then I'm all about it.
All right, we have just a couple minutes left, so we don't have time to do this next question justice, but I'm going to give it a try. I'm going to try with Maria. So LSAs versus PPC. Where do you
LSA.
fall and why?
I mean, unless you have a crazy large budget. So the upside of LSA is that the cost per case is going to be way, way cheaper. The upside of PPC is that you can spend a lot more. So if you give it $1 million, it'll spend the $1 million. If you give LSA $10,000, it might not even spend the 10,000. Most of the time, it actually won't. I want to give them a chance to answer, so I'll leave it at that.
Dimple?
I mean, in my, career, like I used to sell PPC, sold $1 million of PPC and all that. But I will say LSA just because for PPC, it's gotten very, very competitive. So in order to even, make a campaign work, you have to have a really healthy budget. And, for a personal injury lawyer, they might think 5,000 is going to cut it. I'll tell you right now, 5,000 is not going to cut it. You have a budget of 50,000, then yeah, we can talk about a PPC campaign. But otherwise, I would say focus on SEO, focus on SEO optimized blog posts, focus on creating content for social media, and having a combination strategy of like the things that that you can commit to doing or getting done by someone else.
All right, Chris, you got the last word.
I just want to say, or I'll say yes and, right? So you got to know your cost to acquire a client. You got to know what the client's worth. Can you use a channel to acquire a client for value? And that's what it comes down to. In different practice areas, if you're in the auto space, it's going to be tough. But if you're hitting up nursing home abuse and dog bites, you might be able to get a good CPA and have a lot of value. So I'm for both. But if I had to say one, definitely LSA, like Maria and Double.
Good deal. Well, I do want to thank all of our panelists for jumping on today. Some really great information. I knew I'd be excited about being on this podcast, and it didn't disappoint. So thank you very much. I want to thank everybody that joined us. We will be sending out follow-ups with how to get your MCLE credit, as well as information on how to contact all of our panelists if you'd like to for your firm. So with that, thank you, everybody, and I hope you have a great rest of your week.